Did you know that the Parent Trap is a masterclass in retention and loyalty? I'm Penelope, and I couldn't help but overanalyze how it uses design, operations, and systems, so I can show you how you can apply it to your own business. Starting with first impressions shape how customers can feel about you. The very first shot is a ship called Queen Elizabeth II, which apparently is a legendary cruise liner. Immediately, I think, cruise ships are in the hospitality industry. This is a business, so of course they want to make money. Then we see the ship move across the ocean, and as it continues to zoom out, we just witness how massive and grand it is. That's probably close to the first impressions of the customers when they board the ship. So to me, just this shot alone implies hundreds of staff, business processes, and invisible infrastructure keeping everything afloat. For example, we see a helmsman at the wheel. In service design, we would call this a backstage actor, which is someone who performs behind-the-scenes tasks that support the customer experience, but is not seen or directly interacted with by the customer. And this is immediately contrasted by this wedding officiant, which is a front stage actor, fully visible. Now, I know Camp Walden is a totally different type of business, but the first impression is just as intentional. Here, buses full of kids pull up to cheering staff. Returning campers wave excitedly, which I think is proof that they're doing pretty well already in retention. Then of course they have a welcome committee, right? We have the counselors lined up along the road, smiling. So in real life, that's how you ease the anxiety of a customer on day one, by greeting them warmly and making the process feel organized. And note that just like in a lot of kid-focused businesses, the parents are the customers because they pay and decide, but the kids are the end users of the service. The twins even point this out later in the movie, that both parents independently chose Camp Walden. Anyways, we see Marva Sr. standing on the road, directing traffic, likely following a well-rehearsed SOP. And later, she stands on a podium with a megaphone, introduces herself and also her daughter, her right-hand man, as she said. So that kind of clear introduction matters a lot, and you'll see this in service design everywhere, like the pilot introducing themselves before takeoff, or school principal at the first assembly, naming the leader grounds people. And then we first see the camper's uniform on day one. We see green hoodie, white tee with a collar, green zip-up hoodie, white tee without a collar, but they're all stamped with a Camp Walden logo. This is group identity done right, because it fosters belonging while still allowing personalization. Lets them express their individuality while reinforcing brand consistency. Great way to set the tone for the kids. So these show us loyalty doesn't start when the service ends. It starts the second the customer sees you, or honestly, even before that. Which leads me to smooth operations make the whole experience easy. If first impressions hook you, operational efficiency keeps you. I think what blows my mind on this film is how much detail they put operations-wise and systems-wise. I'll show you what I mean. One of the first operational moves that we see from the camp is luggage routing. I think it's clear that the staff has some strict operational scheduling because counselors immediately grabbed a duffel. Like we see here, look at this one. We see Napa, California, Hallie Parker, right? Keep that in mind. And then they check with, I can only assume is the head counselor, who then points them to a specific pile. Then the counselor dumps it there. Probably at first glance, this is very disorganized. Certainly not all bags are accessible. As you can see here, it's very bad UX design. But there's clearly a backstage system here. Either the bags are color-coded somehow, or the counselors are reading the luggage tags. Then we see the mess hall. Honestly, this shot alone shows me workflow optimization. Okay, let's start with the buffet setup. From an operational lens, this is queue management system, because instead of one long line, they have two mirrored lines meeting at the center, which is a great way to move large groups of people efficiently. Then we have the chalkboards right here, I'm gonna assume they're identical. This is information architecture, because by listing the dinner lineup, campers can preview what's being served, make faster decisions, and keep the line moving. Also, the info appears at the right moment, not from a welcome email 3 days ago. And finally, we have front stage, backstage. Here we see the service staff plating food, I'm guessing. But what we don't see, like the kitchen staff in here, they're just obviously as critical. I just can see how carefully orchestrated this system is. They do this 3 times a day, 8 weeks straight. Pretty impressive. Wayfinding is another efficiency play. When campers head to activities, clear, consistent signage points them in the right direction without needing to stop a counselor. So every person who finds sports field on their own is one less interruption for staff. And so multiply that over 8 weeks and you're saving hours of staff time. Yeah, so this also minimizes lost time and confusion, which is always a win for user experience. And amidst the prank war, we also get a snapshot of the camp's daily operational rhythm. We have 3 flags going up here. We have US, the main flag, the camp flag. I got lots of questions here. Who actually raises these flags? Is it the same person for the whole 8 weeks? Or does it rotate among campers or staff? I mean, personally, I think rotation among cabins is better because it builds engagement and shared responsibility. But that's just me. And same with the bugle call, like this one. Is it the same player, same time every day? Or do they have some kind of like a sign-up sheet somewhere? I think either way, these are structured touch points that create some predictability and help manage time for 100+ kids. It's all a part of camp's operational systems for keeping everyone in sync. Then there are surprise inspections. In my opinion, I think this is very smart, announcing that inspections can happen any day, not just campers to keep things clean all the time without staff having to check it daily. But the camp still has room for improvement in terms of operational efficiency. Exhibit A. Annie and crew hauls Hallie and crew's furniture to the roof. How is that even possible? Because first they need a ladder, and let's say, sure, they get access to 1, sure, maybe even 3 ladders, right? But even then, we're talking about beds. So how can 11-year-olds lift them on a ladder? And they did that for 3 beds, which raises another question. Because let's say, sure, they can do it, they're really, really strong, but surely that would have taken a lot of time. So did no staff or campers see them do this? Because I know this is funny, but this is a hazard, like not only to the kids executing this prank, but also to any kids walking underneath, or maybe anyone in the cabin. I don't know, maybe. I feel like these are heavy. I think this is a total miss on risk management. And from an operations standpoint, someone now has to retrieve all of this, inspect it for damage, and potentially repair or replace items. All of this costs time, labor, and money. Like, were there no rounds, no clear policy for campers to escalate or report the situation? Anyways, I need to calm down. Okay, so Exhibit B, Hallie's prank. So Hallie and her friends sneak into a Navajo cabin. This is also just like a massive operations gap, because first, either staff patrols don't exist or they're just ineffective. Second, how did they get access to all of these supplies? Honey, they have some rope, and then they have some whipped cream. Then they have some vegetable oil. In real life, these would either be locked in a kitchen or a maintenance shed. So either the camp leaves supply areas unlocked, or the kids somehow have access to staff keys. It's a good thing though that they have systems for when this happens, because after the surprise inspections, the Marvas enter the Navajo cabin and accidentally become the victim of Hallie's prank. Then Marva Sr. points to the twins and yells, "Pack your bags." Now, it's not entirely clear if we're seeing the result of prior warnings behind the scenes, but this particular stunt did cross many serious lines. So I think it makes sense that we see Marvas lead the twins to isolation cabin, like here. This sequence tells me that this is not an improvised punishment. The camp has an escalation protocol for rule breakers, because as we can see here, there's dedicated signage and also literally a cabin for them. However, I'm really curious how emergencies would work here though. You know, if the twins are so far from everyone, how the camp balances disciplining them, but still considering their safety. Later on in the movie, we see an isolation table here. So that's another thing that's part of their system, I think. Number 3 is big highlight moments stick in people's memories. The Queen Elizabeth II is a master at this. The moment they open the ballroom door, we have a perfectly timed confetti toss. And this moment might feel spontaneous, but someone clearly planned it, right? Confetti doesn't hand itself out, which makes me think in UX design, confetti moments are a real thing. Therefore, celebratory micro interactions that signal user success, delight, or emotional payoff. And honestly, you see them all in the apps that you use. And right after that, guests are met with a soft glowing sea of candles. And we know that because before the doors open, we see servers light each candle at the same time. And I think this is when you might think I'm overanalyzing, or maybe actually just stating the obvious. Candlelight doesn't just illuminate. It shapes mood, softens the space, and adds some movement to the atmosphere. That is an example of service design, intentionally shaping every touch point of a customer experience. In this case, the touch point is the environment. And guests may not consciously notice any of that, but they feel it. And that's what elevates customer satisfaction. Then of course we see the fireworks burst over the ocean. This is another classic service design delighter because it happens at exactly the right moment to amp up the mood. Note though that behind the scenes, this means cross-functional collaboration, SOPs, and risk management. And after watching fireworks, they later go on the dance floor. Again, this is such an orchestrated customer journey. This is all intentional pacing, going from private to public to private to public. Next lesson is clear signals help customers trust you with money. On the QE2, one of my favorite examples is the wine label presentation, because the waiter doesn't just pour, he shows the label first. This builds trust, and in UX design, this is called a confirmation step. Like, here's exactly what you're getting, please verify. It's really part of some quality assurance, also part theatrical flair. And it says, we care enough to get it right. Then there's the photographer during the wedding sequence. She doesn't just snap photos, she clearly directs the couple. And it's such a small thing, but it removes any uncertainty about what to do. And that's reducing friction through clarity, which is a core UX design principle. The customer doesn't have to guess what's the right way, you guide them to it. Now let's move over to Camp Walden. Camp Walden has trust cues built into its core systems. For example, they have a clear visual hierarchy in their uniforms. We see counselors in green shirt and beige pants, and then I'm guessing head counselors switch to beige shorts. And then Marva Jr. removes the hoodie but adds some hat and a whistle. And finally, Marva Sr. is in beige top, dark pants, has a megaphone. This is role clarity, showing the customer who's in charge so they feel safe. And then cabin announcements are announced in alphabetical order, which is a strong example of information design. It's predictable, and again, that predictability makes people feel safe. And even something as small as a luggage tag can be a trust cue. As we can see here, as this girl helps Hallie with her duffel, she spots the luggage tag, which again, I mentioned earlier, that luggage tag mentioned Napa, California. And then she goes, hey, are you from California? And the other girl says, oh, do you like live in Hollywood? Now sure, Hallie flew across the country, so the tag could maybe just because of that. But earlier, when the counselors were sorting bags, it looked like those tags were part of their system. And if that's true, it's one of those moments in the user journey that, might feel casual, but is actually intentionally designed to spark conversation, like what they're doing here. It's similar to like a name tag at a conference, and people trust brands they feel connected to. However, I would say that there were times when I feel like I would have lost some trust to the camp if I were a user, if I was a camper. There's a moment where Marva Sr. offers strawberries to the twins. Here's Hallie saying, I'm allergic. And then Marva Sr. saying, oh, that's too bad. How about you, dear? And she says, oh, I'm also allergic. I mean, maybe this was a different time, but if this happened today, you'd expect some proactive allergen system. Like maybe it's flagged in advance, maybe even built into meal planning, so this wouldn't even happen. Because it seems like Marva Sr. was surprised, but also didn't care, basing it off on what I'm seeing from this scene. And then of course there's Hallie's prank, where she sneaks into Annie's cabin at night and covers everything and everyone in honey, whipped cream, vegetable oil, chocolate syrup. I mean, again, it's funny for the plot, but in hospitality terms, that's a breach of personal boundaries, because guests should feel secure in their private space. This could harm trust, which affects the user satisfaction and also the customer satisfaction. Definitely not good for the business. Lesson number 5, consistent onboarding helps everyone start on the same page. Off screen, we never see how Camp Walden trains its staff, but it's obvious that they do, right? With 8 weeks of programming, dozens of campers, multiple counselor roles. There's no way that this works without a clear staff training program and a set of standard operating procedures. SOPs are what keep every cabin running on the same schedule, ensure safety rules are followed, and maintain the same quality of experience year after year. This is where my service design brain kicks in. I just can't help but imagine mapping out like a full customer journey or maybe even a service blueprint for this camp. Also, the plan of the twins switching is pretty solid because they didn't just swap some clothes and call it a day. They built a full onboarding program. They used some diagrams of each other's houses, complete with some labels and annotations. They go through the family members' photos. And of course, they also drill on the rituals, like the butler handshake, which is very important for consistency. So there's also some hands-on training, I would say, them committing to having the same length of hair and having both ears pierced. And this is so they can visually pass as each other. So consistency doesn't happen by accident. It's trained, rehearsed, and embedded in the culture. The next lesson is physical souvenirs help people remember your brand. Again, the Queen Elizabeth II cruise ship understands this perfectly, because after the wedding sequence, we see a branded photo album labeled Queen Elizabeth II 1986, where a photo of the couple is revealed. And as we know, they get a copy of this photo. Great example of evidencing in service design, giving people a physical keepsake so the brand experience lasts beyond the trip. And customers who emotionally relive their positive experience are more likely to return to the business or share their experience with others, which can trigger future years of revenue. And we also see this when Nick takes Liz in the wine cellar, pointing out bottles from his collection, including the exact wine that was served at their wedding. And Nick even said, "I now have every bottle ever made." I mean, that's pretty good, right? I know this is not technically like a tangible keepsake that they had, but it's like that prop. It's very distinct that Nick remembered that specifically because of their wedding. And it's a direct callback and proof of just how memorable that original moment was, like strong enough for him to track it down for years and buy every bottle ever made. Camp Walden has their own version of this in some way. In the mess hall, walls are covered with historical photos and trophies, going back to even 1917 or 1919. In UX design, I would say that this is basically an offline version of testimonial section on a website, or a 100 years in service badge on a website, because it's showing legacy and social proof. For new campers, this acts as kind of like onboarding. And when you see a place that lasted this long, with that many people trusting it year after year, it naturally primes you to think, maybe I'll come back next year too. Next lesson. Clear communication, stop problems before they happen. Camp Walden nails this in some places. Here we see this camper already knows her cabin assignment before the public announcement. Maybe it was via email or physically posted earlier in the day. I think that's multi-channel communication, and it means fewer bottlenecks and fewer complaints. Also, the uniform hierarchy, as I mentioned before, it does the same thing. Like this camper don't have to wonder who to ask for help. We also see examples of what not to do. Annie's butler reads her packing list after she's already arrived at the camp. I know this is just for the sake of the movie, for us viewers, but in real life, at that point, this is just operationally useless. And then, of course, there's the boy who thought that this was a boys' camp. Again, I know this is just for comedic purposes, but if this was real life, I would ask, did the marketing not target the right audience? Or were the brochures not clear enough that this was a girls' camp? And also, how come this wasn't caught during registration? Especially since his expectation didn't match reality. In UX design, when user expectations aren't aligned on what's been delivered, it leads to churn. However, in the movie, it seemed to work in the camp's favor, but I just know that won't happen in real life. Also, another moment, Annie's or Hallie's return trip is being handled. So Annie, pretending to be Hallie, is giving verbal instructions and physical documents. This redundancy is insurance against miscommunication, especially when stakes are high. And when you get communication right up front, you save the customer from disappointment, and that's a win for loyalty. Last lesson here, which is a great ending makes people want to come back. And Camp Walden absolutely understands this, because on the last day, we see campers hugging each other and also hugging the staff, and they're all promising to stay in touch. That's a clear sign that the camp delivered on their promise. Kids are emotionally attached not just to each other, but also to the staff. In service design terms, that emotional connection drives retention and loyalty, which increases customer lifetime value because they're making it more likely that they'll return next summer. And then we see the boy again saying, "I'll see you guys next summer," which is a great example of service recovery. In service design, this refers to the protocols that help address failures and rebuild trust. And given that these are likely wealthy families, word of mouth referrals carry real weight. I think the camp letting him stay for 8 weeks after failing to contact his parents is a pretty decent decision. That's proof that when you handle unexpected situations well, you can turn what started as a mismatch to a source of future referrals. And then we see two of the girls from earlier. We have Annie's friend from Navajo, like this girl. And we see Hallie's friend. I think it's the same girl. And they're just saying bye to each other before hugging. This really showed how the camp did a great job because these two weren't even the same cabin, yet they're this close. And it's a small moment, but it just shows how camp friendships stick. And because this camp's probably catering to wealthy families, those relationships often extend into broader family networks, creating an organic marketing referral loop without the camp spending a dime. And of course, we can't forget about Queen Elizabeth too, because here in the movie, it shows its lasting impact. We see the twins trying to recreate their parents' meeting down to the boat, as you can see here. And then we have the table as well, right? It kind of is very similar. And then the help as well, as you can see. White uniform. Even Nick acknowledged it, even this lifeboat and this lifeboat. Yeah. And there's the music as well. Again, it's just proof of how powerful and memorable that original cruise experience was, because it left such a lasting impression that not only do the parents remember it vividly, but the kids could reference and rebuild it years later. That's the kind of long-term customer recall every business would dream of. Then when Nick and Liz remarried at the end, they went right back to QE2 and they recreated their original photo and even had a QE2 shaped wedding cake. Again, just the customer experience is so memorable. It just became a tradition, I guess, and keeping the brand top of mind even decades later. I just love this movie as a kid, and I definitely practiced that unique handshake. I know you did too. Also, just all the locations are just cozy and beautiful. So yeah, let me know what I should overanalyze next.